Good afternoon, students. Today we are going to discuss about the communicating with the servers on the internet. It is an important 8-mark question in our semester examination. So be careful, study well these questions. Okay, what is communication? Just imagine, what is communication? Send and receive messages between the sender and the receiver for some purpose. There is a message. Okay, here communicating with the servers on the internet. Here we have to communicate with the servers on the internet. How can we communicate? We can communicate through TCP client application, TCP server application, and HTTP communication. How can we communicate with the server? TCP client application, TCP server application, and the HTTP communications. TCP server application, TCP client applications are nothing but they have just web request and web response. Okay, these communications are done with the help of the namespace system.web and system.net. Got it, students? System.web and system.net. How the communication take place? Through the socket. When the client make a request, the socket connection will open. After that, the request is passed through the server. The server process and send back the response to the client. After receiving the response by the client, the socket automatically closes the connection. Okay, just like the system.net.sockets namespace contains classes and types of establishing connections using TCP and also UDP. TCP means Transmission Control Protocol, UDP means User Datagram Protocol. What is the difference between TCP and UDP? These two protocols are transport layer protocol. The difference is Transmission Control Protocol is worked under the connection oriented system, and the UDP User Datagram Protocol are worked under connection wireless data communication. Got it, students? Got it? Okay, the Microsoft.NET Framework System .NET.Sockets class wraps functions of the Windows Socket application programming interface. In Microsoft.NET Framework, there is a namespace system.net.socket. This is a class which contains, which encapsulates the functions of Windows Sockets application programming interface. Got it, students? Next, we are going to discuss about a simple TCP client application. Simple TCP client application. TCP client application begin with establishing connection to a server by using the TCP client class. How the TCP client application begins the communication by establishing a connection to a server with the help of the TCP client class. First, it will create a connection. TCP connection application, client application by establishing the connection to a server using the TCP client class. Here we are going to discuss about some properties of the TCP client class. The first property is active. Just check whether the connection is still active or not. It will return the true or false value. Got it, students? If the connection is active, it will return the true value. Otherwise, it will return the false value. Client retrieves the underlying socket object. Client is the machine or user who are ready to retrieve the object or retrieve the response which is processed and given back to the client by the server. Linger state sets the connection, linger option, no delay. It causes a delay to be invoked when send and receive buffers are full if the value is set to true. That is, if the send and receive messages are invoked in that particular time, if the buffers are full, the value is set to true. Otherwise, the value is set to false. Receive buffer size. Set the size of the receive buffer. That is the receiving message size. Size of the buffer. There is a limited size. There is a limited size for buffer for receiving the message. For that, we can set it earlier. Receive timeout. Set the timeout value of the connection. We are already experienced about the timeout connection. If you still standing in the same web page for doing some transaction without doing any transaction, if the page is for paying semester fee through online website, if you are still not pay the fee through that site and still stand by mode, after some time it will automatically close by displaying the message. The web page will expand or the transaction is timeout. Got it? Next, send buffer size. Specifies the size of the send buffer. Receive buffer size means specify the size of the receive buffer. Send buffer size means specify the size of the send buffer. Send timeout. There is also some time limitations for sending the data. If the message is sent before that particular time, it will automatically say the message can't be sent. The time is expired. Okay. Next, the methods of the TCP client class. First method is close. Closes the TCP connection. Connect. Opens the connection to a TCP server. Get stream. Gets the stream used to read and write data to the server. Next we move on to discuss about a simple TCP server application. It allows the system.net.sockets classes to write TCP servers. Next, here we are going to discuss about the properties of the TCP listener class. The first property is active property. It will get sets a value that indicates whether the listener socket has been bound to a port and started listening. Next, local endpoint gets the active endpoint for the local listener socket. Server gets or sets the underlying network socket. Got it? Next, methods of the TCP listener class. There is a class called TCP listener which helps to write the TCP service. Got it, students? There is a class called TCP listener which helps to write the TCP servers. Okay. Methods. Accept socket. Accepts an incoming socket connection request. Why there is an socket connection? While we make a request to the server, the socket connection will initialize. Okay. After the transaction is over, the socket connection automatically closed. Next, accept TCP client. Accepts an incoming connection request. Pending determines whether there are pending connection requests. Starts listening to network request. That is, the TCP listener starts listening to network request. Stop. Closes the network connection. Got it, students? Next, HTTP communication. These HTTP communications helps to communicate with the server using the HTTP commands. You have studied it already in your first chapter. What are the HTTP commands we study? Get method and post method. Okay. The TCP client class helps to retrieve documents from a web server using HTTP commands. There are two classes in the .NET framework. That is, they are system.net.web request, which is made by the client, and system.net.web response, which is made by the server. It will handle most of the low-level details of HTTP-based network communication. Got it? Next, here are some of the properties of the web request class. First one is the connection group name. Specifies the connection group for the class. Next, content length. Set the content length of the request data. Content type specifies the MIME type of the request being sent. Credentials specifies the network credentials needed when requesting files that require authentication. Credentials means username and password. Next, headers specifies a collection of HTTP headers. Method determine the HTTP protocol method used for the request. Pre-authenticate indicates whether to pre-authenticate the request. That is, if we whether it have to be checked before passing to the server. Proxy set the network proxy to use for the request URL. Gets the URL of the internet resource associated with the request when overridden in a descendant data. Timeout set the timeout value of the request. Next, methods of the web request class. Abort, it means cancel the request. Begin get request stream, that is provides a asynchronous version of the get request stream method. Begin get response begins an asynchronous request for an internet resource. Create, initialize a new web request object. Create default, this is also initialize a new web request object. End get request stream returns a stream object for writing data to the internet connection. End get response returns a web response object. Get request stream returns a stream object for writing data to the internet resource. Get response return a response to an internet request. Register prefix registers a web request response for the specified URL. From first we discuss about the properties and methods of web request class. Now we are discuss about the properties of the web response class. The first property is content length. Next, content type, headers, response URL. The next, the methods of the web response class. There is only two methods. That is, one is close method and another one is the get response stream method. Okay, students, it is an important 8-mark question. Study well. Okay, thank you. See you on next session.